A couple weeks ago, I actually made a video ranking the final bosses from the Mario and Luigi series. I guess let's do the inverse. Let's rank the first bosses instead. The first boss ranking was really weird to make. I mean, some of these bosses are just total crap. I mean, they're full of tutorials. Some of them are just really easy. But some of these bosses are actually really fun, have some unique concepts, and have some good attacks for a first boss. And also, it's kind of hard to determine which is the first boss in each Mario and Luigi game. I kind of just rolled some Discord polls because I didn't really know. I just wanted you guys to decide because I was too lazy to. And of course, link in the description below if you want to join my Discord server. I let you guys vote on what video I'll do next. Just simple stuff like that. And you guys decide stuff like Smoldergeist being the first boss in Dream Team and the Lee Ham Bros being the first boss in Partners in Time. So little decisions like that just to make this video a bit more accurate to which one's actually the first boss. But other than that, let's get started. But actually, before we get started, I'm still trying to hit 1,000 subscribers before summer break starts, so I'd really appreciate if you subscribe or tell a Mario RPG fan to subscribe as well. I'd really appreciate that, but other than that, let's get started on this video. I knew Smoldergeist was going to be pretty low, but I did not expect it to place dead last. But now that I really think about it, Smoldergeist is just a really bad first boss, let alone a really bad boss in general. Well, first off, Smoldergeist doesn't really feel like a boss at all. I mean, think about it. Smoldergeist, the only thing that makes it feel like a boss is the boss theme and the boss transition that's in Dream Team. That's the only thing that's making it feel like a boss. I mean, the attacks, those aren't boss attacks, those are pathetic enemy attacks. I guess it's not super pathetic for an enemy. That's the thing about it. It's not pathetic for an enemy, but for a boss, especially because the next boss is Grobot, which had way better attacks, yeah, this is pathetic. It's terrible. The other thing as well is that I don't like the concept where Smoldergeist surrounds itself with fire. I think that it could have worked if Mario and Luigi had a way to get rid of the fire by themselves, not just by Smoldergeist or Starlo. That's the reason I don't really like the concept too much. Maybe if you had a bros attack that would actually stop the fire, then it could have been good. Maybe using the badge that you just got, that could have also been good. But it doesn't work. And speaking of the badges, I don't like that you have a tutorial here for something that's very non-specific. I mean, badges are something you use throughout the entire game. And I'm going to be comparing it to Petey Piranha in Paper Jam, where obviously that also has a tutorial, and we're going to talk about that. I don't like that tutorial either, but at the very least it's something specific. And you can't really use that for normal enemies. Where here, you could have just used badges. You had a badge tutorial for just normal enemies. They did it for stuff like jumps and hammers, but not for badges. And that just doesn't make sense to me. Smoldergeist not only fails as a first boss, and a boss in general, but it's just really pathetic that this is labeled the first boss. I really wish Brobot got that credit. If this was labeled as a normal enemy, like maybe the Goombas in Bowser's Inside Story, where they actually try to teach you how to use the green shell. Obviously that's a unique enemy, but it's not considered a boss. That could have been good. I would have been totally fine with it because these are fine enemies. But as a boss, Smoldergeist just fails horribly, and that's why it's at the bottom at number 7. Tolstar is the easiest first boss. I mean, it's not even close. It's easier than the first bosses from Bowser's Minions and Bowser Jr.'s Journey. And those are autoplay games. Yeah, it's pretty pathetic how easy Tolstar is. But at the very least, the reason why it's actually above Smoldergeist is that this actually feels like a boss fight. Tolstar actually feels like a normal boss, or at the very least, it feels like a first boss. It's extremely easy, and Tolstar only has one attack, which again is pretty pathetic, but at the very least, he does feel like a boss with both the boss theme and him having that interaction with you, which a normal enemy wouldn't have. And there's no tutorials here, which is kind of nice, which at least those little things do put it above Smoldergeist for me. But man, it needed more HP. It's so easy, and it needed more attacks. That's the reason why it's so low. King Bob-omb was probably on the right track to be a good first boss, but how it is right now, it's only meh. I do like some of the things about it though, unlike the other two bosses we talked about. I do like that the main supporting enemies here are the captains that you fought out through the entire world. I think that was a good idea. I also think that King Bob-omb there was a bit weird, but at the very least, I like the nod to Paper Jam adding the timer, because obviously the boss, King Bob-omb and Paper Jam, had a timer as well. But the timer here is a bit off. I don't know why there was a timer here, especially because there's only 5 enemies, there's only 1 wave, and these enemies aren't really that strong, so the timer didn't really come into effect. I guess it kind of added a bit of stress in your first playthrough, but I kind of knew when I was going through this, I mean, yeah, that timer just wasn't really needed. I was going to defeat it no matter what. The other thing, though, is that I kind of mentioned that there's only 1 wave here. That's really lacking in substance. I mean, 1 wave is pretty boring, and that's really disappointing that it's only 1 wave. I mean, more than 2 waves would have been enough for me. I mean, maybe don't have the timer go out through every single wave, just have it for the last wave, that probably would have been better. But I just think that only having 1 wave just means that there's really not that much substance for this first boss, which is a bit disappointing, but at the very least, there is some good things about it that do put it at least at number 5. So this fight is very interesting. I actually think that King Bob-omb is a better boss fight than Private Goomp, but as a first boss, Private Goomp is much better. Because Private Goomp, this fight in general, actually teaches you better stuff. It kind of tests you better than the King Bob-omb fight does. I think that more waves for a first boss is better than just having 1 wave that's somewhat powerful. But the main reason why Private Goomp is actually above King Bob-omb is one simple command: Clash of the Captains. Clash of the Captains is actually pretty intimidating when you first see it, especially because King Bob-omb tries to do that with its timer, but Clash of the Captains here is actually intimidating. It's somewhat scary, because Private Goomp just develops a ton of fire and just rushes right to Captain Goomba. And you know that if Captain Goomba is taken out, well, you lose. And he has all his powerful attacks used right away. And it kind of tests to see if you manage your CP well, because if you don't have enough denies, well, you're screwed. You won't be able to deny him enough, and you'll lose all your HP. And in that regard, I think it works pretty well. And this is why I like Private Goomp better as a first boss than King Bob-omb. I also like just there's more substance. Yes, that substance is definitely bland, which is, again, why I think King Bob-omb is a better boss. But as a first boss, you need more waves to kind of test their ability as a new player. So I actually like Private Goomp better as a first boss, and that's why it's at number 4. Obviously, it's not going to beat the top 3. It's still Bowser's Minion. It's still an autoplay game, which is why it's still going to be pretty low. But it's definitely a good first boss. It's definitely a better first boss than some of the bosses that we're going to be talking about. The other bosses that we haven't talked about yet are better bosses, while this one is one of the best first bosses in the Mario and Luigi series. This top 3 is basically just in a separate tier compared to the bottom 4. I mean, probably 2 separate tiers. Like, these are actually good bosses. But at number 3, we have the Lee Hammer Bros. I mean, the Lee Hammer Bros only has 2 attacks, which is kind of pathetic, but I really do like this fight. My main point of why I actually enjoy this fight is actually the biggest weakness as it being a first boss. Well, I really like that the babies are on their own. You only fight with the babies here. But the problem is that this is the first boss in the game for most people. So for me personally, the first boss is supposed to somewhat test you to see if you learn the basic abilities. But here, if you're only using the babies, well, you're not really testing any of your ability with the big bros, not learning your combined jumps, or adding the attributes when you have both the bros and the babies when you're using certain bros items. But here, I mean, you have access to those bros items, but only the basic way to use them, and the babies are just not as strong, and you can't use stuff like combined jumps yet. I do like the Lee Hammer Bros as characters, and I do think that the 2 attacks are here that are good. I mean, I do like them. The thing here is that I just wish that this was the second boss in the game and Swiggler was first, because I do like them as characters, but if this is the first boss in the game, I just think it doesn't do a good job kind of testing you and your abilities. And in that regard, that's why it's at number 3. Yes, I know. I ranked PD Piranha as my least favorite boss fight in Paper Jam, and I absolutely agree with that still. The thing about it, though, is that I do genuinely enjoy this boss fight compared to every other first boss in the Mario and Luigi series. And the main reason for this is because I'm pretty sure this is my favorite set of attacks from a first boss. I mean, yes, they're basic, but it also has the screen chase segment, and I just really like the base attacks. I like the attack where you have to jump over PD Piranha swinging at you so you don't get eaten. I really like the attack where PD Piranha just has a shockwave. I really like, again, the screen chase segment, which, yes, does lead to my biggest problem with the fight, which I also talk about in the boss ranking. I don't like the mid-tutorial here. I mean, it breaks the immersion, it's really slow. So yeah, it's just not great. I will say though, it's definitely better than the Smoldergeist tutorials because you can't really do a screen chase tutorial in just a normal enemy fight. It has to be for a boss fight. So it kind of had to be here. I mean, I don't really like it, but at the very least, I know for a fact it has to be here. So that's why I'm somewhat fine with it nowadays, even though, yeah, it definitely breaks immersion still. I really like the set of attacks that PD Piranha has. It has a decent amount of health. I like the bros attacks that you have. I mean, it's a pretty great first boss, but it isn't the best first boss in the Mario and Luigi series. I've said this before, but the Seed Pipe statue from Bowser Inside Story is the quintessential first boss. It is the best first boss I've ever played in the video game, because it tests exactly what you've learned throughout the entire game so far. It tests Bowser's vacuum block. It tests your punches. It tests your green shells for Mario and Luigi. It tests your dodging with hammers. I like the attacks here with the Seed Pipe statue. There aren't very many. They're not better than PD Piranha, but they're still pretty good. I don't know that if any first boss has actually tried to test you on this many things, where it actually tests you on absolutely everything. You have to use the vacuum block to inhale the blooper. Then Mario and Luigi uses the green shells to do damage to the blooper. And then you use the hammer to continuously dodge the blooper's attacks when you're playing with Mario and Luigi. And then when the blooper gets out of Bowser's system, then it just gets stuck in its statue, and then you get to use Bowser's punches to do more damage. It does really well. Another thing that I really enjoy is that the blooper does a lot of damage to Bowser when he's actually inside of him. He just drills into Bowser and then just spins like crazy, which takes away his HP. And it's actually pretty dangerous because you can't heal Bowser at this time. So because of this, I actually enjoy this fight quite a bit. I did not expect to enjoy a first boss from a Mario game this much, but the Seed Pipe statue just proves me so wrong. This first boss is amazing, and that only does translate to this being a good boss in general, but it being an amazing first boss is an amazing accomplishment. Thank you guys for watching this video. My next video will actually be an update video explaining why I haven't uploaded that much, and also if you lasted this long, you might as well subscribe. I really appreciate that, but other than that, G-bye.